Why, hello, and welcome to issue 633 of Geek in the City Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Aaron Duran.
I'm one of your other hosts, Binarita.
And I am your other host, Cable Hashitani.
And we are joined this week by author, creator, teacher David Bowles out of Texas, yes?
Yes.
Hola, David.
Deep South Texas. Hola,
The
¿cómo estás? The deepest part of South Texas.
the deepest part?
Yeah, literally you can't go any deeper without it being Mexico. That's how deep it is.
Go on.
So the part of Texas that has flavor?
Yeah, exactly. That where there's actually some spice. Yeah. Where I live, it's 5 minutes from the border. Wow, there's a cattail. It's really
There's always cat. You're going to have at least two cats on this show, most likely.
Yeah. One of mine is lurking around here, so she may suddenly decide to put her face in the screen. So
perfectly acceptable.
That's the best. If you're gonna get cat in your face, that's the bend you want. So
indeed, but it's seldom the one you do get, right? Isn't that
you
true?
don't get a choice. That's the gift and the curse of cats. Like, yay, cats.
As being demonstrated like very clearly right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough about cat butts.
I mean, I'm sure
I'm
it's going to
excited
happen
to be here with you guys. Yeah. Cat butts are omnipresent.
So a quick little background in case you're wondering, like, why is this like, God damn it, I messed up the ticker. Never mind. We'll keep moving on. It has the wrong number, but it has all the information. Doesn't matter. If people are like, where did you guys find, this guy, David? And a little backstory is I met David in 2018, I believe, right, at the Mexicanics Initiative that was San Jose, right?
Yeah, that's for Worldcon in San Jose. That's right.
Yeah. For Worldcon at San Jose. We were brought together, and he and I connected pretty well, and I had a good time talking with him. He gave me a lot of insights into Mexican American and Mexican folklore. He was talking about a lot of the stuff that I was writing about and didn't realize was kind of a big deal. And Dave was like, no, it's a big deal. You need to quit downplaying your shit, Aaron.
Yeah. Yep.
That sounds like a familiar sentiment.
Shut your mouth, Cable. No. And since then, I've stayed in contact with David. He is a teacher. He is a writer. And for me personally, is an all-around inspiration that I draw upon on a constant basis. So I'm really honored to have him on the show this week.
Thanks. It's a lot of fun to be here.
Yeah. In addition to what he does, he's also launching a new fictional horror podcast called The Obsidian Codex, which when I first saw the quick post to the average listener, I kind of read it as like, oh, cosmic horror, but through pre-colonial Mexico.
Yeah,
so I
certainly.
Was like, oh shit, I'm in.
Bit of that. Yeah, I mean it's definitely somewhere in that space between cosmic weird horror and folk horror. It's this notion. The basic premise is there's an anthropologist living in Austin who teaches at the University of Texas. The name is Robert Kerr. He's Mexican American with some also like Scottish roots, maybe quasi autobiographical. He's in a really kind of dark place in his life. Most of his family is dead. He's in Mexico burying his grandmother, one of his last remaining relatives. His wife has divorced him and is living in Boston, remarried with their two sons. And he's just in this really, really strange place where he's trying to stave off grief and loneliness and just like an identity crisis by throwing himself into a translation project, which is, the kind of sort of what I do, translating from Nahuatl, an indigenous language that is spoken today by 1.5 million people in Mexico and Central America, but that was the language of the Aztec Empire, and so a lot of colonial era texts that we have that are written in Roman script are written in Nahuatl because it was like the lingua franca of the time. And as an expert in this is what he's doing. He's translating the Florentine Codex into English, into like robuster, more modern English, and that's been eating up all of his time. But when he's burying his grandmother, he's approached by this like, mysterious priest who hints that his grandfather, who's a renowned archaeologist who died like 10 years before the podcast opens, had a couple of secret journals in which he had transcribed something called the Obsidian Codex, and that and it kind of like this launches Robert on this search for this apparently very dangerous piece of ancient knowledge that has been hidden away from the world, and that has in it like the key to causing the end of the world. And, you know this from research that you've done, Aaron,
Right.
and Brina, you may know this as well, that the Aztecs believed in the cyclical nature of the world, that we were on the fifth age, the fifth sun, and that eventually this one, which is the sun of movement, will come to an end because of earthquakes and other types of destruction, and then a new world will emerge with new humanity and so forth. And the idea is that this Obsidian Codex can bring that about, that there's a rite in it that could do that. So it's going to be a lot of freaky shit.
Well, what's fascinating is that, especially when it comes to that kind of mythology, like from my reading, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, like that ancient culture doesn't have like a Ragnarok, not a hard fast end, because it's cyclical. It's like,
right,
this will happen, but something's coming after it. Exactly.
And there may be remnants that survive, because the idea was in each one of those destructive cycles, like a small remnant is saved by Quetzalcoatl, and allowed to survive into the next age. That's why there are giants, because the first group of humans were a lot bigger than us. He saves a remnant. They carry forward into time, and they're the giants. And the next one, they're saved by being turned into kind of like simian creatures that can, like, because the world is destroyed by wind, and they can hang on to trees and things with their prehensile tails. And this is where we get like these kind of like missing link type of creatures that are somewhat like humans, but clearly more ape-like. And then there's the third age was destroyed by fire. Some humans are survived by being turned into like humanoid bird creatures, which is where we get like harpies and other kinds of things. And then the fourth age is destroyed by a flood, and some humans are saved by being turned into merfolk, into sirens and tritons and stuff like that. So in Aztec mythology, there's this idea that like these, like humanoid cryptid kind of creatures are remnants of the previous one. So one imagines that there will be a remnant of humans as well. Who knows, will get chosen to survive the apocalypse, but the apocalypse is coming according to Aztec lore at some point. And we will all be wiped off and gods will be like, okay, let's try to get this shit right this time. Because it's not been going well.
We keep screwing this up. Yeah. Humans are trash.
Yeah.
I thought that we had the apocalypse in 2012. I mean, a bunch of people threw parties. I thought that we were in the new cycle and we were just messing it up again already.
Yeah. Yeah, well, see, this is like the Maya calendar, and of course the Maya didn't necessarily believe that was an apocalyptic moment. It was just the signal of a new millennium beginning, and we just, Westerners or people that just don't understand it well enough assumed that was something apocalyptic, and like, can you almost imagine the ancient Maya kind of like rolling their eyes at us like, no, dude, it's just like when you went from 1999 to 2000 or 2001, depending on like what camp you're in. Right. It's just a new millennium. Please quit making such a big deal about it. But yeah.
I remember at the time, right around 2012, I actually was a producer on a paranormal radio show. So you can imagine what we were dealing leading up to this. And like every guest that the host, I was a producer, every guest that the host wanted was talking about the end times are coming, be ready, ancient powers, blah, blah, blah. And I kept saying like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And he was like, what, the Maya? I'm like, that's not going to happen. Like, that's not what the Maya said. It's just the circle's complete.
Yeah.
And here's the next circle. Starting. It's just a new circle starting, man.
Because the Maya also in classical Maya culture, there was still they thought we were on the fourth age of the world, and they believed this age would end and there would be another one as well. But that's not what their calendar was talking about. They're like, we don't know when the world's going to end. We can't predict that. It's whenever the gods finally just have enough, and they're like, screw these guys, right? But we do keep track of time, and we're about to start like a new era, and so everything sets to 0, and it looks all scary and weird, but it's like Y2K all over again. It's like y'all are just getting a little freaked out about nothing.
Actually, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that the world can actually end is really fascinating. And of course, the Nahua peoples that we normally refer to as the Aztecs. Aztec is a really bad term, but like everybody knows them that way. The people that we're referring to when we say Aztec are like 3 different Nahua groups that were like the co-leaders of the Triple Alliance. They were the Mexica, which were the most powerful ones, and then there were the Tepaneca and the Acolwa, and those 3 groups of Nahuas. Of Nahua people like ruled for more than a century there in central Mexico, but they all believed in these beings called the Tzitzimime, and the Tzitzimime are, it's often translated to star demons, like really ferocious goddesses that have kind of been like locked away in this prison, that are ready to pop out and devour the stars and the sun and wreak havoc on the earth. And
It sounds so
all
badass.
they need is somebody all they need is somebody to like just open up their cage, and they're coming. And that's why when an eclipse would happen, people would be like, "Oh shit, the Tzitzimime have started eating the sun. This is not fucking good." and then they're like, "Oh, okay." Phew. The priest would do something. Maybe somebody would be sacrificed. The eclipse would end, and they'd be like, "Okay, whew, we were saved, man. That was so close."
I kind of love the idea that every time there's an eclipse, the entire culture goes, "Dodge that bullet." Whew.
They're like, now the Earth could have just been, bad. It's really funny. Think about that 2012 thing. I'll tell you something that just popped into my head. The following year, like 2013, like I say, like I was telling you guys, I live on the border with Mexico. I've lived here my entire life in what's called the Rio Grande Valley, which is like this 4-county area at the very tip of Texas, where it tapers to a tip at its tail. And so I have family across the border of Mexico. These are transnational communities. I spent a lot of time over there. And I remember I was at a pharmacy in Mexico not long after, all this stuff had like kind of fizzled out. And there was that, the Aztec sunstone up on the wall that everybody calls like the Aztec calendar. And like nobody actually knows what it is. It's not a calendar at all. It's something totally different. I was buying, I can't remember what medicine I was buying. And there were a couple of tourists there, winter Texans, we call them, like people who spend their winters down here in South Texas. And they were like, how much does that cost? And the pharmacist, because they sell curios and stuff, and he was like, you can have it for $50. And they're like, oh wow, it's so inexpensive, it's such a beautiful like piece of stone. He was, why? And I told him in Spanish, ¿por qué les está cobrando tan poquito? Why are you charging them so little? And he's like, oh, it's because it's already out of date. Yes, it means you. Yes, it got one. And I'm like, oh no.
So it's like when
the
you buy
calendar's
it,
done. It's like selling last year's calendar. It's like, oh, it's already past 2012. The
it's like, oh, we're just selling it for the pictures now. It means nothing.
I was just like, oh my god. And I just like,
hilarious.
I didn't say anything. I was like, what do you say? You're not going to get into a huge scholarly explanation of how totally wrong he is and how they're completely different cultures and whatever. You're like, yeah, just sell it to the old white people for $50.
Yeah. Let the pharmacist make his dollars.
Yeah.
I guarantee he didn't pay $50 for it.
Yeah, no, exactly. He was making a profit on it. I don't know how much. But
good for him.
And that makes me think a little bit about what this, because the show is a horror podcast. And it's me. I'm playing Robert Kerr, and most of it is just we're hearing his field notes as he's looking for and thinking about and translating and grappling with this text and all the crazy stuff that happens to him. But also, it's a meditation on identity and loss, despair, and the consequences of cultural appropriation. Because this text has been passed orally for so long, it wasn't ever meant to be transcribed or even recorded because his grandfather recorded it on a reel-to-reel in the 60s and then transcribed it. It was never meant. It was supposed to be kept in the minds of the guardians of the Obsidian Codex. The keepers of the Obsidian Codex are called, and just kept away, like knowledge that Quetzalcoatl left in the hands of these people when he when his reincarnation left the Earth 1,000 years ago. And so it's also because Aaron, I know you and I talk about this all the time. Like, we're Mexican American, we're dealing, we infuse our work with like Mesoamerican things, and there are times when both of us sometimes have felt like, do I have a right to do this? I'm Mexican American, but like I'm not, like, as far as I know, like a direct descendant of the Mexica or anything.
Well, I've had late night conversations with Denise there about like, do I have the right to tell the story? And then she tells me to shut up and write it.
Yeah. Because, well, there are like multiple reasons, but one thing that pops into mind that I was talking to my wife about today, because we were kind of poking fun at people who call themselves Neo-Mexica and who are like, yeah, we're Mexica, and whatever, to each their own. But like literally the Mexica were annihilated because Cortez and his men were driven out of the city in 1520. When they came back in 1521, the city had been decimated. Tenochtitlan, had been decimated by smallpox. There was hardly any able-bodied warriors still left. And then they put up with a siege for 3 months over the summer. And the Tlaxcalteca and their Spanish allies razed the city to the ground. Like, there was essentially no building standing except for in the sacred precinct, where you had like pyramids that are not easily torn down, right? But like it was flattened, and nearly every person was killed. Like, a handful of people were allowed to escape when Cuauhtemoc, the last emperor, finally surrendered. They were allowed to escape. But like people going around going, "Oh, I'm descended from the Mexica." It's like, yeah, no, you're fucking not. The likelihood of you being descended from the Mexica is like so infinitesimally small. You might be descended from other Nahuas who were under the Aztec Empire, but you're not like an Aztec warrior's, great grandson. It's very, very unlikely that you are. And so, but there's like a cultural heritage, I think, Aaron, that because of how big the Aztec Empire was and how it was from sea to sea, and they had come their Pochteka, their kind of like mercenary merchants had gone as far north as like Arizona and New Mexico and South Texas, and as far south as Central America, and Nahuatl was like the lingua franca, and their state religion was practiced everywhere. That there's an argument to be made that Mexican Americans are the cultural heirs of all of that, because our ancestors, it's kind of entwined. When we think about our legends and our cuisine and all that stuff, there are like all these imprints of what was there at the time of the Spanish invasion. And so it's a tricky thing, and everybody's got to grapple with it their own way. And so I wanted to use this fictional character as kind of like a stand-in for me, like a really asshole version of myself, a really extreme jackass academic snob kind of version of myself, to explore those things, and to like an alternate universe David, if I was doing things differently and had a different attitude about it, like and it's healthy. I think it's I literally just read on Twitter, somebody put a tweet out saying, I wish that more men would go to therapy and rather than starting podcasts. and I think that, oh shit, being a reader gets
God damn it.
Like, that's what we're doing. We're starting, Aaron. This is our psychotherapy. This is our therapy, right?
Here's the thing. Man. I started this pod.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Bean. No, go.
You weren't here last week, David, but Aaron and I both were like off our game and just sort of like not with it, and like easily distracted. And we made a joke that we've made multiple times. Is that like, Cable, today is your turn to like be our therapist, because you're feeling fine, or you seem like you're feeling fine, and the rest of us are just like, what's going on?
We're just trash.
Yeah. And then maybe some other episodes, it's Cable's time to get therapy from the two of y'all, right?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
He's like, less often. Look at his face. He's like, yeah, that happens less often, David.
Yeah.
It's
Cable was really good at hiding things.
But he has his
I refer to it as suppression, Aaron.
That's the technical term, sir. Yes.
And I used to be better at it, but I've been hanging around Aaron too much. So
yeah, I draw out the.
Aaron just like lets it all hang. I just like get that out there.
Aaron lives in his fields, and
Aaron does live in his fields for sure. And he pulls Beanarita in, and He tries to pull Cable in, but Cable's like, no,
Not having any of this.
Not exactly, but
not exactly. Cable is my angry voice. When I want to be angry, I let Cable express it. Yeah.
Me parece muy bien. That's awesome.
Listener Norm from Texas says we are all trash pandas down here. So you have a fellow Texan in the chat right now. He's from Longview, which is nowhere near where you live.
No.
Right? No.
Not at
But
all.
Norm's good people. You will enjoy being around Norm. He's a good guy. What made you want to go down the horror route with this? Because for those who don't know, I have read and supported a lot of David's books, like They Call Me Guerrero. Like a lot of your novels and short stories are very positive, supportive, and not horrific. I mean, and now you're like, fuck it, I'm going for horror.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, this is a good time to talk about like the two different sides of this two-faced creature, David Bowles. So yeah, most of my like young adults and middle grade and children's work is like definitely more positive, and it'll have dark elements in it. But there's always like the sense of victory and stuff like that. But
I feel like it's almost impossible to tell Mexican American myths and legends without having some darkness in it. Like it's just
exactly. There's going to be darkness in it. Like even in They Call Me Güero, there are like these little hints of it. In the sequel that's coming out from Penguin Random House this fall, they call her Fregona. We get to see a lot more. Yeah, I knew. Bina Rita's like, oh, a book about me. All right. For those listeners who don't know, Fregona is like Mexican Spanish slang for like kind of like, well, it's like a euphemistic version of another word, but it means like badass, like a female badass, a woman
that's her
really cool, tough.
If you're right up there with Chingona is the one that I grew up with.
Chingona is definitely the word for which I had to search for a euphemism since it's middle grade, right?
Is it weird that my family called me that as growing up?
Chingon?
No, Chingona, which is really weird.
They called you Chingona.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure my family knew more about me before I did.
It's weird because it is a word that
I know.
Alternates.
Yeah.
I can't answer that for you.
Yeah, it's a whole nother thing that we don't have time to dive into with my family and me. Whew.
That's the off-air.
It's
yeah.
I mean, families do lots of weird stuff, and I'm a queer Mexican American, and I remember when I started realizing that about myself as a teenager, how like worried I was that my uncles would find out, and like what would happen to me first of all, and then like the shit that I would catch and all the nicknames that I would get. And so we can, our relatives can sometimes be both kind and brutal at the same time. Like they're being sweet, but they're also like just jabbing it in, right?
Oh, only Mexican Americans have terms of endearment that are horrible insults.
Oh yeah.
Gordo,
feo, feito.
I didn't know that gordo was an insult until I was like 20 years old.
You're like, it's just gordo, just like
I'm gordo.
It's kind of it's like being called Gordon. It's like gordo. What?
No, I finally had a prima tell you like it's because you're the fat one growing up. I'm like, what?
And then like if you're the dark skinned one, you're prieto or moreno, negro,
or just negro.
Negro,
negro. Just the plano. Just I literally have a brother. My half brother is like half black. He's Afro Mexicano, and so, but ironically, no one dared to call him negro because he like it just felt gross because it's not like he was dark complected. He literally was, Afro Mexicano. And so that's at least my family didn't go take that step. That would have been gross.
Yeah. I'm not going to go into some of the things my family's done. Anyway, David, continue.
So like before I went off on this like writing for young people, I had aspired to be like a fiction writer for adults, and I had written lots of short stories, and this podcast literally derives from some short stories that were published in my book Chupacabra Vengeance, which is a collection of adult science fiction, fantasy, and horror short stories that came out in 2016. So that's what I'm mining, and I just love horror. I have since I was a kid. The scary stories that I was told by my abuela were like the things that kind of like opened me up to wanting to read scary stuff in books and to watching scary media and so forth. So yeah, as Aaron has intimated, it's really hard to grow up with Mexican American folklore and not kind of like have something dark in the work that you do. And so this is definitely me exploring that more. And I also, there's been like, kind of like a boom in recent years and like cosmic and weird and folk horror that's about the clash of modernity with older ways and the kind of flattening homogenous way of being of the present day with the very like geographically and culturally specific way of being of the past. And so I'm having fun playing around with that in this series as well. And so if it ends up, I have multiple series plans out. The second series actually won't feature me as the main voice talent. It'll be my daughter Loba. She'll be doing and it's going to go back in time to 1975, and it's this graduate student from UT in Austin going to Mexico to try to find the recordings of the Obsidian Codex that are referenced in this season. And so like I want to jump back and forth. I've been inspired in the creation of this by Archive 81, is that what it's called? Right, that just came out on Netflix. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to see.
Is it 81 or 31 or Archive? I know you're talking about.
It's Archive 81.
81.
Okay.
I
really
recommend
recommend
it. I've had it recommended.
Yeah. It's based on a podcast turned into a TV show. The TV show is frankly better than the podcast in my opinion, but it just felt like it was the right moment. It is because I listened to the first season of the podcast driving back from Austin last week, and it's good, but the TV series is just like, wow, it's really, really good. And watching it, I was like, yes, it's time, because I've been kind of playing around with the idea of doing it. I wanted to kind of stretch my wings. I'm a musician. I've done a lot of like sound design for like indie music that I've produced, and I was like, let me do this. I recently did an audiobook version of a book that I translated that just won an award from the American Library Association. The Sea-Ringed World. The Sea-Ringed World, Sacred Stories of the Americas won one of the translation awards from the American Library Association. So, and I did the audiobook version of that. It was such a pleasure. And I've always been told, you have such a voice. You have a perfect voice for radio and this and other thing.
It's a good NPR voice, I will say that.
Yeah. And so I'm having a lot of fun playing this character and doing like acting, which is something I haven't really done before, other than just like goofing off, whatever. I think people will really like it. The first 2 episodes are dropping on February 14th, which may seem like an odd choice, but February 14th, in addition to being like Valentine's Day, is also the beginning of a new sacred year in the Mesoamerican calendar. So the Mesoamerican calendar has 2 years. It has the solar year, which is a 360 day year with floating 5 to 7 additional days kind of tacked on until the spring equinox comes. And then the sacred year is 260 days, and it floats, and every 52 years they align. And so it's a really interesting thing. So since the sacred year begins, I thought it would be an auspicious time to start playing around with the old gods and rites to call them and open up the cage in which the Tsitsimime are imprisoned. And if I can help,
man, every time I talk to you, whether it's Twitter or this show, I fucking learn something new. God,
Thank you.
I feel like there's gonna be a David Bowles newsletter where like every few days is like, here's your fact you didn't realize, and I'll be like, God damn it, yeah.
I would subscribe to that.
Yeah, 100%.
This sounds like a really cool idea. I mean, that I do all those Medium articles, and I'm always putting stuff out on Twitter. I'm a geek. I'm excited about the stuff that I learn. I think there's that the best type of scholarship is the kind of scholarship that can be conveyed in a geeky way to people and get them excited and curious about it as well. I hate scholarship that's hermetic and locks away knowledge from the public eye. And so I see my playing around with fiction as a way to impart like knowledge that that people just are unaware of, that scholars have known for hundreds of years, but that normal people don't, because no one takes the time to create any kind of like viable entertainment out of it, or just to tell it in a fun way. I'm about to retire at the end of this year from teaching. I've been teaching since I was in my 20s, and I'm turning 52 and on the 17th. In Texas, we have a great teacher retirement system that, incredibly enough, the Republicans have not destroyed yet. So it's just amazing. They've destroyed everything else in this freaking state. Yeah, I'm gonna get it now, right before it's gone.
Yeah.
And it'll allow me to dedicate more time to my already like ridiculously prolific writing career. But yeah, I mean, I want to be able to do that all the time now. So
well, I love what you're creating, because I feel like, well, I sent you many late night Twitter messages, but I feel like a month ago I might have been a little bit into my cups. Shocking. And I was watching Thor Ragnarok, and you know where this is going. Yeah. It was like 1 a.m. watching Thor Ragnarok, which I love. That movie's wonderful, with all the mythology worked into the sci-fi epic. And it was like 1 a.m. and I send David this Twitter private message being like, God damn it. Like, and I admitted, like, I've drank a lot tonight, but hear me out. Like,
yeah.
Like our culture and our background has all these fucking badass, over the top, horrific, adventurous, amazing myths. I don't want to take away from like European stuff. I just want to make cool movies and stories about what we do, because it's all fucking cool. And he was like, right with you, brother.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And that's why like the things that we're doing with like Chispa Comics, which we will be working with you as well. And yeah, and like all these other endeavors that I'm involved in. I've got a novel historical fiction coming out later this year called The Prince and the Coyote, which is about, again, a really like essentially unknown figure in the U.S. and throughout the world, and that's Nezahualcóyotl, who, when he was a teenager, went on the run from the Tepaneca Empire, survived with an imperial army hunting him down, because his father was the king of Texcoco and like the overlord of Colhuacan, which was kind of like an empire of the Colua people. Survived, managed just to find allies and gather resources, and then together with his uncles, who were the leaders of the Mexica and Tenochtitlan, overthrow the Tepaneca Empire and establish the Aztec Empire. And he was a poet and an engineer. He created the dike that that went for miles and miles and miles down the middle of Lake Texcoco, separating the briny water of the eastern side from the fresh water of the western side. He created like the freaking causeways that everybody thinks about Tenochtitlan with their wooden
and I
bridges.
are both like, what the fuck?
Well, I Googled him. And it's just like the very first thing that comes up. I'm going to mess it up. Nezahualcóyotl, scholar, philosopher, warrior, architect, poet, and ruler.
Yeah. He was just like an incredible one. Probably one of the, I would make an argument that he was the most brilliant Mesoamerican, most brilliant indigenous person of the Americas that we know. That because obviously there may have been more brilliant people than him that just didn't leave their mark. His face is literally on the 100 peso bill in Mexico. One of his poems is on the back of the bill. I've translated a lot of his poetry from Nahuatl into English. He is an amazing human being who when he became the leader of Texcoco, he transformed it into essentially like a Camelot. It was like a cultural paradise. And just an amazing person with so much knowledge. And so I'm writing a book about I've written a book about his teenage years, because I want people to know about all this incredible stuff. I want Mexicans and Mexican Americans to know, but I want other people to know about our heritage, because people just don't, they just think about the Aztecs and like, those bloodthirsty savages that rip people's hearts out or whatever. It's like,
oh my God. There's a long story about there's a long story way back in the podcast days. Myself, my friend Keelan King, he's an African-American man. We were at a party, and I overheard these, Bean knows this story. I overheard these people in this room. They were all like white people. And they were talking about how, as much as the slaughter of the indigenous people was bad. It might have been good in the long run because the Aztecs and their people had an insatiable bloodlust that were it not for the Spanish conquistadors, they would have turned on themselves. And I'm there with my friend Keelan, who's African American. He looks at me and he's like, how's that insatiable bloodlust? I'm like, well, you know, I may have to walk in there, take my shoes off, and just start doing some murder. And he's like, yeah, that's what happens to us. Good thing the white
Those
man's
people
there to
seemed like
protect
prime
us.
candidates for sacrifice right there. I would have been
Yeah.
like, all right.
It's just an
where's
ongoing
the
joke.
steak knife?
It's an
Yeah.
ongoing joke with my friend and I when he's like, how's that bloodlust? I'm like, oh, it's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people just need to know, by the way, that that's ahistorical, and it was something that was blown out of proportion by Cortez because he needed to justify his illegal actions. He was going to be executed, and he needed to prove to the king that there was a reason for him to do what he did. And so,
That's really, I like to point out.
Classic
like,
colonizer playbook.
Mhm.
Although I do have to point out when Cortez showed up, everyone's like, well, they didn't know who he was. They thought he was a god. They didn't understand. I'm like, look, bitch, like the Aztec, like their capital was an island. They knew how boats worked. Like when they showed up on ships, it wasn't like, oh, how is this white man floating on water? Like they knew how that worked. Like if it wasn't for disease, we could be having a completely different discussion.
It was also not the Spanish that really did this. There were 40 Spaniards.
Mm-hmm.
It was the Tlaxcalteca, who were another Nahua group that were like the mortal enemies of the Mexica and had been at odds with them for more than 100 years, who were like, oh, you guys have some tools that we don't have. Let's team up and fuck these dudes up. And that's
and you don't like them. Oh, nice.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, for the longest time afterwards, the Tlaxcalteca were given a really elevated status. They were given titles. They were allowed to ride horses, and they converted to Catholicism. And for a while, they were like the enforcers of the crown for about 100 years. They were sent all over what's now Mexico, down like the area where I live was like partly settled by Tlaxcalteca families. First, they created a community next to Saltillo in the state of Coahuila to deal with the Comanches. In the 1550s or so, and then a couple hundred years later,
that seems pretty far north.
Oh yeah, it is north. I mean, Coahuila. This is like just we're talking really close to what's the U.S. And then in 1749, a dozen Tlaxcalteca families and a dozen or so mestizo families from that area came to this area and founded Laredo and Reynosa and all these border towns that my family has come from. So yeah, the Tlaxcalteca. The story of the conquest is really a story of an internal battle among Nahua nations, and not so much like it's just the Spanish taking advantage of the situation. But yeah, I mean, by the way, I want to say hi to Alberto Chimal, who I saw tweeted a little while ago.
I saw Alberto tweet it, yeah, and on the I think on Facebook, on Instagram, Hector also.
Oh, cool. Hey.
Everyone's culinary abuelita,
Yes. Oh my God, such a great cook. God, I love Hector to death. I next time I'm in Austin, I'm going to like hit him up. I've been leaving him alone because he's engaged and all stuff, but I'm going to eventually hit him up and make him cook me some more food.
Denise.
Somebody asked.
Denise has had interactions with him too online now, and I've had some of his food because he was part of the Hangouts. I also found out that he is friends with a friend of the show. He is friends with Jen Van Meter, who is Greg Rucka's wife, which I had no idea. I was talking about, I was like, oh man, I knew this guy from the Mexicanics Initiative. He's this wonderful human and this great cook. And she went, is his name Hector? I'm like, oh shit. So yeah,
his fame is widespread. Yeah. And just one final thing before you guys have to move on to your next guest, but somebody asked like a little more detail about the way the podcast is. He's relating usually towards the end of the day, the happenings of the day, but as he's relating them, things are happening to him. So you get like a mixture of his notes about things that have happened today and then the crazy shit that's happening to him at the moment, or like phone calls that intervene or people that come to the door or whatever. And I have a couple of people are helping me out with some of that. And so it is definitely, it's like a blend of those two things. It's not like everything's happening in the moment, but he's recording, like just voice memos. And as he's recording them, whatever happens in his house gets picked up in the podcast. So.
Nice.
I think people are going to enjoy it.
I'm super
Definitely
excited.
Mhm.
When I first
I'm
heard
glad.
about the podcast you're doing, it's funny. My mind immediately went to another podcast. I think it's called like Monsters or Ghosts of Appalachia.
Old Gods of Appalachia.
Old Gods of Appalachia. The whole idea being like, look, the Rocky Mountains, the Himalayas, they're big, tall mountains, but the Appalachian Mountains, they're old, they're run
Ancient.
down, ancient. There are so many powers at work, which made me think of what you're working on. I'm like, no, these are entities that have been around so much longer than you could possibly fathom.
Yeah, and don't have human desires at all, and like you can't satiate whatever kind of bizarre appetites they might have with whatever worship might work for like a more Western, Christian kind of deity, right? Yeah. They're not placated that easily.
I'm not gonna shit on like the Roman or Greek gods, but they're basically a soap opera. They're just people with foibles and desires and personal interests, and like petty backstabbing. They're people.
I think they say a lot more about the Romans and the Greeks of that time period than they do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hear you.
One of our listeners, Edalyn, who goes by Gutter Bruja, she just wanted to comment, I would love to sit at his feet and listen to basically anything he says, as long as just tell me
as long as he tell me stuff. Yeah. Oh yeah.
David, you are a natural born teacher.
Yeah. I sometimes I think when I I'm getting really cool ideas, I'm like, you know how you can like just open one of those Twitter, like what are they called? Like where you're just talking. I sometimes feel like just like ideas are rolling through my head. I'm like, I should just like open this thing in Twitter and just start like babbling at people and see how long and how many people will come in and listen to me. Because
I follow it every time you do that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, when I'm like tweeting, but I mean like talking out loud, it would kind of be cool. But yeah, so I can tell you that because of how prolific I am, that at least in some way I will continue to pour out my ideas into the world, and hopefully the people will find enjoyment in them. And
I was going to ask, like, how long do you foresee Obsidian Codex going? Does it have a finite or infinite ending?
No, it has a finite.
Finite?
I mean, okay. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I do have like a definite like arc that I would complete like in 6 seasons if I'm able to pull it off.
Geez.
We'll see.
That's
I can. Yeah, no, I've going back and forth in time. I know how I want things to wrap up and so forth. And there are ways of truncating that down into 4 seasons by cutting off like things that are a little extraneous to the main storyline. But yeah,
nice.
And it won't just but every single season would like focus on a different protagonist. So the trick is like I can do a couple of those seasons. But like I have to bring in other people. So I've already lined up. It basically just like making my children, who are adults now and very talented creators on their own.
I've seen your daughter's art. She's amazing.
Yeah. My middle daughter Charlene is a graphic novelist who has worked with me on who works with me on this ongoing series called the Tales of the Feathered Serpent. And then my oldest daughter is a tattoo artist and painter and just all around an incredible artist. Loba, she's just really amazing. So, and my son is also who's in college at Austin right now is also a great artist. So I can't draw my way out of a paper sack. All 3 of my kids are amazing.
Neither can I.
What a talented family.
Yeah, they get that from their mom.
Family.
She's like, really creative with like artistic things. So I'm just going to use them all. My oldest daughter's her partner is a great musician, and I'm going to use his talents to help me with like musical score, just like just basically.
Denise, you know nothing about that.
About being used?
No, about having a musical partner that she can use.
Oh,
my husband is in a band, and well, they use us too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
it's a mutually beneficial relationship.
We're all scratching each other's backs. Right?
We're all artistic parasites.
No, it's symbiotic. It's symbiotic.
Symbiotic. Thank you.
I like that. That's better.
Well, David,
like,
if you ever
like
need if you ever need 3 additional voice actors, I mean, I'm just saying.
Ooh, I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah,
Most of us have voice performing experience.
Credits, yeah.
Obviously, it's not me
Actually,
because I can't talk today.
You're like,
Most
That
of
was
us talk
hilarious.
good. One of us don't.
me no be the person. me have problems with me speech.
Don't
Yeah,
believe
no,
her. She's very talented.
She's got an incredible voice. Yes, she does.
Yes, she
This is
does.
true.
Oh, thanks. I think I sound like an anthropomorphic mouse, but thank you.
Everyone needs that.
Hey, look. There's a role for all of us. Like right now, I'm like watching a C drama, Chinese drama, Word of Honor, and like just like listening to like dubbed voices that don't correspond at all to like the actor who's playing the role. And I'm like, yeah, wow. You know how like in China they're like, you know what? Why would we even try to record audio on site? That's expensive and it's noisy. We'll do everything post. Do you guys just like say your lines? It's not going to be recorded, and we'll just have like maybe it'll be you, maybe it'll be somebody else dubbing your voice. I don't know.
No one's ever going to know the difference.
Yeah, like Untamed, right? The character Wang Chi, like the actor in real life, I can't think of his name right now. He's got a nice little like lilting, sweet like voice, and the character in the show is like, "Hey, stop that shit! What's going on with you?" And you're like, yeah. I mean, the character needs that voice. He needs to be able to say to his significant other, Wei Wuxian, you know, Wei-ying, stop. He needs to. It can't be like, Wei Wing, we stop. Come on, it just like it really works.
Well,
anyway. I will say I have that in my favor. I am actually Spanish speaking first, so.
Está muy bien. Siempre hace falta que alguien hable español. Aaron, on the other hand, Aaron needs more.
I need help.
More help with Spanish. Yeah, but
I
it's okay.
do because growing up, my mom refused to teach it to me because she got made fun of for not being English first.
Exactly. And this is an experience that a lot of Latinx people have. And
I'm running into so many of them now. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really common. And I always tell people don't feel bad about it. It's just like the way it is. I mean, feel angry about it, but I tell people you maybe feeling pissed off is better than beating yourself up because you didn't have any choice in that. The system that you live in that treated your mom in a way that helped that made her think my kid would be better off not suffering through this. That's what needs to be overturned and reformulated.
Well, thank you. Well, before we let you go, I have a message from Alberto.
Oh, okay. What does he say?
To you, he said, I have never watched anything on Twitch before, so I failed miserably at leaving a comment, but please say hello to David for me, and congrats.
Thank you, Alberto. Gracias.
Gracias, Alberto.
That's hilarious.
But he tried.
Guys, it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, no, hey, I've never used Twitch ever, so I'm even less of.
Yeah.
Everybody learned something today.
Yeah. David, thank you so much. It's been a dream having you on. I want to have you on again someday soon.
Absolutely, whenever, guys. I'm just sitting here writing away. That's easy enough for me to hop on when you guys.
Obsidian Codex drops when? Let folks know.
Next week, he said.
Next week on Monday, December 14th. The first 2 episodes. So
February.
Each one is roughly 20 minutes. So February 14th.
On all the iTunes, Stitch, all the
iTunes, Spotify, Stitch, all that kind of stuff, right? So
great.
All right.
Already
take care.
Subscribe.
David, thank you, man. Thank you for coming on. Get some sleep. I know it's later where you're at, so get some rest, my friend.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
You guys take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Good meeting you.
Nos vemos. Bye.
Adios.
Adios. He's just the best, right?
Yes.
He's pretty great.
He's pretty great. I know I'm biased. I met him a few years ago, and he left a massive imprint on me. So
no, he's very charming.
Bean has that look of like,
affable.
oh, Aaron, you sweet spirit.
Well, we know you're thirsty. No. I liked him. He was a lot of fun.
Wait a minute. What does that mean?
Wow. Okay.
For
I mean, I
friendship
do
and socializing.
I do find
Getting
him
to know
handsome,
people.
but I don't know. You have to drop thirsty
Sorry,
on me.
I don't. Is it not allowed to use thirsty in a non-sexual way?
I thought that was the only way it got used.
It's strictly for sex stuff.
It's
okay.
Thirsty is sex only.
If nothing else, it's in a very it's not for a friendship.
Okay, so what is the friendship equivalent of thirsty?
Inspiring. I found him very inspiring.
Seriously,
during Season of Bruja, I have sent him many of like, hey, is this how you would say this in the wall?
Yes, you've mentioned. No, it's good to have a resource like that, and that's one of the many wonderful connections you made by participating in the Mexicanx initiative.
Pretty sure I can trace my entire modern career that fucking convention. I don't mean that in a bad way, but like that just was what happened.
You were very
It was a very empowering weekend also.
Yeah, I
had a lot of happy crying that weekend.
You can come up with effervescent. You were very effervescent after that.
Yeah.
That entire weekend and expounded in great detail about how it was life-changing. So I'm glad
Norm would like to say tonight on Thirst Corner with Bean and Aaron. I don't know what Norm's saying. But Ina said thirsty is mostly sexual.
Very
Almost entirely.
Very well. I don't know. I don't talk good today, remember?
That's right.
That's fine. I will say that I do appreciate, and I think Denise will also appreciate, that we have yet one more person to add to the who does Aaron drunk text to club.
I don't drunk text him. I drunk Twitter DM him.
Sure.
That's
same.
Not better?
It's the same.
To be fair, he replies and also does the same thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
No,
how dare both of you? How dare you?
You're shocked. You're totally shocked. I can tell. Well, what's next on the show?
I have an interview with Lee Ann Kurr, who is the writer and director of the horror film Student Body, which dropped today. And we're going to review it next week, though. I've seen it. I don't know if either of you have seen it. I know we're not going to have cable next week.
That's correct. I haven't watched it yet. I will be watching it. I just posted a link to the IMDb page for Student Body.
And this is her first feature film.
So I'm interested in watching it. I'll send you some notes at least that you can talk about.
Okay, great. Because I don't know if Denise and I are going to have another co-host. It may just be her and I next week.
Okay.
Who knows?
It's not like there isn't a list of people that are always going, hey, if you need someone.
I mean, there is.
Yes, I know there is.
Oh, that was sarcasm. Sorry. But I tell you guys that when I had a cocktail, Jen made me one with like 4 shots.
I remember.
Bless her heart. So what should we do? Should we do some banter or roll into the interview?
Let's go ahead and post up the interview, and then we can chat afterwards.
I don't know how this works. I'm going to fire it off, but then I don't know if it's going to mute all of us. I don't know if we can talk while she's
we can
talking.
Mute ourselves.
Yeah, I can do that right now.
All right. Ready? So here we go. My interview with Lee Ann Kurr, the writer and director of Student Body, a horror film, starring many people. I don't have the IMDb open. I suck. I don't want to say just Harley Quinn Smith because that feels pedantic. But here we go. My interview with Lee Ann Kurr. They're never going to ask us again. With you and whatnot. For those who are just joining in, we have Lee Ann Kurr on the show. She is the writer and director of the new film Student Body. Hi, thanks for joining us.
Hi, great to be here, Aaron.
Yeah, this is the second time this morning I watched the film.
Wow.
I definitely having fun with it. It kind of very much gave me, like the high school horror vibes that I used to love. When that was my jam. So it was kind of nice to see some of that. Can you give us like the inspiration behind the film?
Sure, Erin. Yeah, I had, I guess in some ways a typical high school, middle school experience where I felt kind of like a social outsider. I felt like I was trying to find that group of friends and trying to find my place socially. And then at the same time, I felt an immense pressure to achieve academically and achieve in my extracurriculars. And so I really, with the character of Jane in Student Body, wanted to show her as being, pulled in these two directions of this, desire to be a part of this group of friends, a desire to reconnect with her childhood best friend and to be part of that and to be accepted. And at the same time, having this teacher that wants her to perform and want her to be her best and is a bit aggressive on that front, and how those pressures can be really scary and they can lead to a lot of anxiety. And I wanted to, have the horror elements be an extrapolation of those very real fears of not being good enough at that age.
Yeah, no, and I definitely, see and feel that, while I'm watching the film. Like almost every one of her friends from upon viewing it is like an element of one of her anxieties or pressures that's pushing and pulling on her while not letting herself have her own identity yet, as she's still discovering herself.
I think that's a great observation, Erin. I feel like for, the one friend, it's, am I funny enough? Am I tough enough? Am I cool enough? Am I like rebellious enough? I think that's a good observation, that they're all kind of representing factions of herself that she maybe wishes she was more of, and is kind of looking at them as this, we have this one of the opening shots of the film is this slow-mo catwalk of the friends walking towards her. And I just wanted them to feel so glamorous and so just like amazing in her eyes, and just see that longing on her face of, if only I could be one of them, which I think is, hopefully something audience members will connect with from those years.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that, because when I first saw it, my brain kind of went to those films where, she is the outcast and wants to be a part of them. But I like the little spin you put, is that she is part of them. She is friends with them, and yet still doesn't feel like, I could, unless I'm wrong, feels like she still isn't enough to be worthy of their friendship, which ends up being interesting as the story progresses. You find out that opinion is not necessarily true.
You're absolutely right. I think that was something I definitely experienced in those years, where you feel like you're in the group, but you're constantly, that's where the anxiety can come from, is questioning, like, am I actually cool enough to hang out with these people, or are they just going to kind of like leave me by the wayside? So I think her and the kind of choices she makes in terms of, trying to see if they can get a retake on their test, and, trying to see if, I can do this stuff so we can play this prank and break into school. It's kind of like, I need to solidify my position. And so I think with high school, so much of it is power play, and that can be really overwhelming, especially when you're trying to also be good at school and impress your teachers. It's a lot to handle.
Yeah, no, and it feels like she's like, it definitely is a lot to handle, and it's like everyone's trying to impose their will on her. Is that seems to be that runs throughout the entire film, from even just the personal interactions at the beginning to when, like, the crap really hits the fan and whatnot. It's still outside forces trying to exert themselves on her. Can you talk a little bit about like the evolution of her being externally driven to eventually when we reach a more internal moment for her?
Yeah, that's a great observation, Erin. I think so much of what I wanted to talk about was the difficulty of finding your own sense of agency at that age, and finding that sense of autonomy from more assertive personalities that are trying to mold you and form you, and how that can be really difficult to do. And I think for me, it's Jane's journey, where at the beginning of the story, the way I kind of thought about it and talked about it with my actor, Monse, is that she's afraid to take up space. She's afraid to exert her own will. And so other people are exerting theirs upon her. And so for me, it's her journey of learning to be assertive in her own way and show her own autonomy. And then, that leads to certain events. I think that her story is ultimately a bit tragic. Without giving any specifics away, there's a tragedy to that, where when you do finally reach that point to be autonomous and to do things, things can maybe tip a little too far in the other direction. And, you know, trying to make up for the fact that you were passive before. So yeah, I think that's definitely part of the journey that was important to me, was little by little, how can she start to do what she feels in her own gut is right, as opposed to catering to the people around her who want things from her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and it definitely shows, and you see the growth. And again, we can't go into like how it ends, but you know, the growth is definitely there, and it's, you know, in only the best ways that horror movies kind of show growth in that way.
Absolutely.
How did you go about like the casting of the film? Like, what made you pick each individual performer and think like they're gonna bring out what I want in this character? Were there elements you were looking for, or were you trying to kind of go against type a little bit?
That's a great question. So I think Christian Camargo, who plays Mr. Ansbach, the teacher, he was someone who was always at the very top of my list from the very beginning. I was very familiar with his work, both on stage and in film, and just knew he would bring that right mix of, you know, having the ability to make your hair stand on end, but then also bringing like a groundedness and like a rhetorical sensibleness to the point where I wanted the audience to listen to what he had to say to Jane, and to have part of them be like, oh, maybe he's a little bit right. I don't like his methods, and he's obviously a little alarming, but maybe he's a little bit right about her. So he brought that perfect mix. So we were excited to just have him accept the role. And then for the 5 teens, that was more of like a robust auditioning process. And I think for me, overall, with all 5 of them, I think that they're all characters that, especially with the other 4, are trying to compensate for their own vulnerabilities, their own fears. Whereas Jane, you know, her fears are a little more on her sleeve. We can tell she is dealing with a lot of anxieties. The other 4 are as well, even though they're better at hiding it. And so for all 5 of them, it was important to find actors when they came in to read and to work and the casting days, where I could see that beneath the layers of coolness, like there was that little bit of them that was still vulnerable and a little scared, and that had that soft place. Because I think all of them, no matter how cool they are, like all of them end up going to a more vulnerable, softer, maybe in some places angrier place, but it's all, they kind of get ripped open a bit, each one of them. Even French, Austin Zazier, who's from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, is such a beautifully wonderful comedic actor, but even he gets a little moment of, he just isn't living up to what he wishes he could be and the person that he thinks he should be. And I just think when we were casting, all 5 of those actors showed that softness that I think all teenagers have, that they work so hard to hide. So overall, that was the big thing I was looking for.
That's great. And I could almost imagine the audition process itself kind of creates that for you, because even though they're trying to present as, you know, professional and I got this, like those butterflies never go away during the audition process. You're always thinking like, did I do something wrong? Am I standing wrong? You know, stuff like that kind of brought out some of it too.
Completely. And it's interesting. This isn't giving away plot spoilers. There's a very main pivotal scene between Christian Camargo's character and Monse's characters of Jane and Ansbach very early on in the story, where she confronts him after school and they have this whole conversation. And we just, along with my line producer, decided to shoot that on day 1. It was a huge scene. It was very pivotal. And my actress Monse plays the lead. She's so incredibly gifted and so talented, but I loved having the natural butterflies of day 1 of shooting come into that scene. So I thought it was really fun that we just like threw her right in and was like, okay, you're going with Christian, you're doing it. And you could feel like the natural like of it, which just works so well with the scene. Yeah,
that awkwardness and tension was definitely there. So it well done. You pulled it off. I want to like quick move to like the actual filming of it in terms of like far too often horror movies can get really exploitive in how they show, you know, kill scenes or however. Were there moments where you wanted to push it a bit more and then decided to reel back, or were there actual times where you wished you'd maybe pushed it a little bit more?
Actually not. It's an interesting question that you bring up. And there are certainly, people who have expectations of the slasher genre that are going to be looking for a certain amount of violence. I was actually very inspired by Lynn Ramsay's film, You Were Never Really Here, which is an incredible film that is actually full of a lot of violence, but she very deliberately doesn't show a lot of it. And I think for me, it was a balance between knowing when to just go for it and show that and have possibly like a cathartic moment that is in fact violent. And then also to be really cognizant that for me, the ethos of the film is that these are not just kids that are cannon fodder or for the meat grinder, if you will. I really, with the approach of like a slower burn for the first half and then introducing more genre elements in the second half, wanted the audience to really connect with these people and their relationships. And I wanted to treat them in a non-exploitive way when they do. Things end up happening to some of them. No spoilers, of course. So I wanted to be judicious about when I show violence, when I show harm, or when it's implication. And sometimes the implication can be even more horrifying than the actual event. So I think for certain moments of violence, it is definitely more of a masking and an implication and letting the imagination fill in that gap. And also, maintaining a humanity for the characters so that they don't just become vehicles for crazy kills. And there's a place for that. And there are films that do that. And that's wonderful. Certainly not lambasting them. But for this film, I wanted to maintain that, these are young people and that in real life, schools can be extremely dangerous and kids die in schools now. So I wanted to be cognizant of that. But then, also letting there be a couple moments in the film where we do see that violence and we see what the reality of what is happening occur on screen.
Yeah, and I really appreciate a lot of, some of the tropes to genres to split all of your main characters up. And in Student Body, that doesn't really seem to happen. And it's an interesting mix of, and again, I want to get like too many spoilers, but there's like a peeling of layers as the main character grows. And your main characters almost kind of personify certain elements of her layers and that allow her to grow, but in, more darker ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I think I really grew up loving Mousetrap by Agatha Christie and loving a lot of like murder mysteries where all the characters are stuck in a space together, and the play No Exit, where they're all just like have to deal with each other and how that can get dark fast. So I was more interested in like the pressure cooker environment of them dealing with one another and their personalities as things escalate and ramp up, as opposed to like, let's split up and we'll get out better that way. Like, I don't know. No one's ever also like, that's like a tough thing, a tough sell unless it's Cabin in the Woods and it's deliberately calling attention to it. So,
yeah. I mean, I do like you kind of remove that almost immediately by very much setting up that once the school locks down, there's no getting out. Right. Prevents it like, why don't they just leave? Like, I like that. I always like setting that up really early so the audience never thinks like, why are they still here?
Yes.
So I know we've only got a few minutes left here. Can you talk about where folks can find the film and where it's available at?
Yes, of course. I'm so excited for people to watch. So Student Body is available on streaming and video on demand platforms starting on Tuesday, February 8th. It'll be available for pre-order. It's currently available to purchase for pre-order, which would be awesome. Everyone should pre-order it. It's available on Amazon, Apple TV, and also iTunes. And it'll be out on, I believe, like Google Play and further platforms on the 8th. So as of now, that's where you can rent and stream it. And we're very excited.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I definitely recommend it. And we'll put a link on our site and make sure our fans have a chance to check it out. Is there anything you can talk about that's coming up next? Now you've already, now that you've kind of, gotten the horror, is there what other films you have planned next or ideas?
The next one is still coming of age horror, but it's a ghost story. So ghost stories are terrifying to me. I don't know if I'll ever get to watch The Conjuring. It scares the crap out of me. But that's why I like making movies about things that really frighten me. It's cathartic in a way. So hopefully, getting the next one underway, which is a ghost movie, and then also working on a graphic novel script for a coming of age fantasy story. So
nice. I do
in that
comic writing, so I know that world a little bit.
Staying in that young adult coming of age story, but using a genre to tell it is kind of my favorite thing.
That's great. Awesome. Well, I had a lot of fun with Student Body. Leanne Kerr, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Aaron.
Yeah, I had a great time chatting with you.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Unmute. There we are. I had a conversation with Lee Ann Kurr talking about Student Body, her new film that is opening today on all online forums. It's tonight. So
That was a well done interview, Aaron.
thank you. I actually accidentally sat in on the next 10 minutes of her next interview because I didn't realize that she was doing like junket style.
Oh, whoops.
So I was like muted and quiet in the background. I didn't turn off. So long story short, Geek and City Radio does good interviews. Other sites don't.
I have that unbiased opinion from before I was a part of Geek in the City Radio, largely because you made a practice of, well, these are the 15 questions that everyone else is going to ask. I don't want to ask those because I don't care about that. I
don't want to ask questions. I want to get to know the filmmaker. Even if the filmmaker, little humble brag, even if the filmmaker is fucking Jerry Seinfeld, I don't want to talk about B-movie. I want to talk about what you like, which is why when way back in the day when Scott Dallin and I had a chance to interview Seinfeld, we didn't talk about B-movie. We talked about why he loves Superman and what would his Superman story be. Which, by the way, was his American Express commercials. That's his Superman story with him and Putty.
What? His American Express commercial?
So Seinfeld about, oh my God, 13 years ago, did American Express commercials with the guy who plays Putty in Seinfeld, who's the Tick, the first Tick.
Patrick Warburton.
Patrick Warburton as Superman. Seinfeld did those commercials for American Express where Patrick Warburton was Superman and Jerry was Jerry. So like there's an episode where like Jerry he drops a VCR that he bought and Patrick Warburton's like, you want me to fly around the earth and rewind time so you don't have to drop the VCR? And Jerry's like, no, don't rewind time. No one likes it when you rewind time. It's really easy, Jerry. I can do it. It takes like 3 minutes. Don't do it. It throws everything off. I'll just buy a new VCR because I have American Express insurance. Like that's what it was. And Superman's like, all right, whatever. Seems kind of dumb. I could do it.
Seems kind of dumb.
So everyone else in that like junket is interviewing him about like Seinfeld. They're like, when's Seinfeld getting back together? And Jerry was like, Seinfeld never went away. Like it's on every night on some channel. Like you could watch us. I will never fucking forget. This is around the era where Mel Gibson was calling women sugar tits and was having his full-on breakdown. And the film critic from the Christian Science Monitor, I will never fucking forget this, said, Jerry, since you're basically the Mel Gibson of comedy, and everyone at the junket went, whoa. And myself and Scott Daly, having no care about decorum, went, you fucking kidding me? Everyone else went, oh, Scott and I are like, you fucking kidding me? What the hell? Anyway, everyone else asked Jerry about B-movie or Seinfeld, and his manager got to us and we're like, so B-movie's great, whatever, fun movie. We love the show. You want to talk about Superman? And every other critic on the table looked at us like, these fucking nerds. Motherfucking Seinfeld talked to us for 25 minutes. 25 minutes. Then we got pulled aside after the junket by Jerry and his handler saying, I just want to let you know that Jerry said you two were the greatest interview he has had on this entire junket. And whatever you guys want, Jerry will give it to you. And we're like, yeah. And then the thing we asked him was like, what's your favorite Star Wars moment? And Jerry went, the Pardon Empire, where that guy goes, pew, pew, pew. And we're like, great. Cable, that's a long way to say the Geek in the City has a long history of never asking the questions that anybody else asks.
I know this.
Yes.
Not everyone who listens has heard these stories.
So I saw Student Body. We're going to review it next week, right?
Yeah, we'll do that next week.
Okay. We're not going to have cable, so
it's
Cable,
nothing nefarious. I have a company party for
no. I know. Like
if you want
to like email us your thoughts, so
I will. I will do that.
I've already watched it, although now I kind of wish I'd waited till after the interview to watch it. Maybe I'll try to watch it again now that it's available publicly.
I watched before and after her interview, and in full disclosure, I enjoyed it more after her interview.
I think that I think that when you know what the auteur is trying to convey, or what sort of thoughts and feelings and experiences go into the story that they tell,
Yeah,
you just like enjoy it that much more deeply. You can understand it that much more thoroughly.
Yeah.
And
I sort of I didn't completely check out, but I sort of checked out during the
in full disclosure, everybody, this was a pre-recorded interview.
So that I will still go into watching this blind, and then after I watch it, I'm going to listen to her interview again and probably give it another watch. So I'm excited.
Also, I want to give a shout out to a friend of the show, Martin Vavra. He is why we have this interview.
Thank you, Martin.
And also our condolences to Martin. He had a rough week last week. He had to say goodbye to 2 of his pups within 24 hours. And I have been there.
That's all of his pups, by the way.
All of his pups.
They
were great. They were like Huskies / Malamutes, great pups. I have met them.
Big,
good
beautiful
doggos. Beautiful dogs. And having been blindsided by a pup who seems healthy, and then the night they quit being healthy, like they start to pant, they're in pain, and you take them to the vet the next day, and the vet's like, we can't fix them. All we can do is lessen their pain as they go to the Rainbow Bridge. I had been there. So a big thanks to Martin for connecting me with the crew, and also our sympathies. It makes for a shitty time, man. There's no soft sell in it, so anyway. Yeah.
So we have a short time left. Do we want to talk about Avatar at all?
We can try. I only watched the first 2 of this week. I ran out of time.
Let's do the first 2 then.
Okay, because I'm in full disclosure. I'm in full promo mode for Season of the Bruja.
Shocking.
Which means no, it's good. It means I'm talking to people, like that's taking up a lot of my time right now, which is good.
I think that works fine though, because episodes 7 and 8 are sort of their own arc, and episodes 5 and 6 are separate from that. So
yeah, all right. So yeah, Cable, take it away, I guess.
So episodes 5 and 6 are kind of standalone episodes each. The first is, you need the Banhammer over on YouTube, by the way.
I already did.
Okay, good. One is...
Oh, God damn it. That's a new one.
All right. The Aang, Katara, and Sokka all venture forth into the Earth Kingdom. In the first episode, they visit the main city where Aang had been previously, and reunites unknowingly with an old friend of his who's also 112 years old and somehow still alive, the Mad King of the Earth Kingdom. And it's cutesy, and you kind of see all of it coming because he runs them through tests to make sure that he can really... He's like, you need to be the Avatar. You need to think outside of the box. And it's a neat way to teach kids. Don't just do what you're told. Think outside of the box. The second episode also takes place in the Earth Kingdom and kind of covers Katara's political beliefs and as she tries to rally people to shake off their bonds and break out of a concentration camp that the Fire Nation is holding them in. And that was the episode that I went.
Which is really awkward, by the way, for who runs the concentration camp.
Yeah. So I texted both of you this after I watched it. I'm like,
I forgot about this part.
So the person running the warden of the camp is voiced by George Takei. And for like the 6 people who don't know George Takei's history, he spent some of his childhood in the internment camps here in America for Japanese Americans. So to have him play this part and play it as like, it's like, oh, you're playing him as if you had been given the role of Gul Dukat. That's amazing.
I was thinking that too. I was like,
very arch.
I was at first really, in a weird way, kind of offended that George Takei would accept this role. And then about 20 minutes in, I was like, I get what he's doing.
I get
it's fucked up, but I get what he's doing.
I got what he was doing, but it still on paper, when you bring this forth and you're going, hey, we want to cast this role, let's approach George Takei. How do you do those mental gymnastics where you're like, is he going to say yes? Is he going to be pissed?
How is this honestly, I think you approach it honestly pretty easily. I think if you're writing this and you know that you're writing a story that involves concentration camps with a series that, even though about Cable, your own admission, is a world that isn't Earth, because you've talked about before about Avatar is not Earth.
And this is still my issue with the show.
Yeah, but you can still recognize elements that Avatar pulls from Earth. You know, I feel like if you approach George Takei properly, he goes, you want me to play our jailers. And the writers say, yeah, but let me tell you why. And they tell him why, and he goes, okay. Like, he draws upon his own experience as someone who grew up and was a child in the camps in the West Coast of the United States, and goes, I can find something in this. Because I think in the end, as much as George Takei is whatever you see him now on Instagram, georgetakei.com, whatever, he's balloon knot. He's a persona now. In his heart, he still has a purpose. He still has a message to tell. And I think he saw within these episodes of Avatar of like, I can reach children. I can show them in the most unobtrusive way, at least an opening of their past. I don't want to scar them. I don't want to be a dickhead and be like, everything was awful. But I can give them an opening to explore.
He provided them with a version of a camp warden that you can look at and go, oh, I can hear every word he's saying. He's still a bad guy. And I get that he's a bad guy. And you can get that if you're 10. Going, oh, okay. Bad guy.
Yeah, exactly.
He says nice things. Still a bad guy.
Nope.
And there he goes.
I was just gonna say, like, well, if there's one thing we know about Dave Filoni in the year 2022 is that he has always been really good at, you know, taking a really shitty concept and maybe not always putting it on its head, but bringing it to light in a way that is not like pandering or like
And that was a Filoni directed episode. You're right.
Yeah, he's not like spoon feeding it to you, but he is making you aware.
Yeah, it is about accessibility.
And again, like Takei's performance is kind of over the top. You know, he's
deliberately.
He's having his way with it.
Yeah, and it's actually in a weird way, not to get too deep on this. Dave Filoni acknowledging his own ethnicity and then pushing past it is actually really interesting. By his own admission, Dave Filoni is half Italian, and then for the most part Croatian, and then English. It's interesting in the fact that in America, in America's past, Italians were not white.
That's true.
Up until the 1930s, Italians, they were European, but not white. They were hated, actually. Italians didn't become white until post-World War II. And it wasn't that they stopped being white in terms of white supremacy in America. White supremacy decided to pull them in as white. And it's interesting that whether he is doing it intentionally or not, Filoni, from a narrative standpoint, is kind of exploiting that. He kind of knows, and he works that into the stories, which I think, in the long term, in a weird way, also explains George Takei. Especially when you start to talk about the whole concept as the model Asian. Italians quit
the model minority myth.
Yeah, Italians were a minority until about 1930. Post World War II, American Italians overnight became white. And from that, you could argue then led into the whole concept of the model minority, which would be Japanese Americans.
Asian Americans.
Overall, yeah, you're right.
Not
Kimball.
Just Japanese Americans.
Yeah, because it homogenized that entire part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the model minority gets saddled very squarely on the backs of Chinese Americans a lot. And then Japanese Americans, because Chinese Americans were still, this gets into the back and forth of like Chinese Americans, or the Chinese could not become American citizens until like the 1940s, 1950s.
Yeah, until after the Chinese Immigration Act, right?
Yeah, because the Exclusion Act kept them from being Americans.
They could build the West Coast, they just couldn't be American.
Correct. But there was always that back and forth between which, like, we accept the Chinese, now we accept the Japanese, now we accept the Chinese again, now we accept the Japanese again, and it, yeah. Which got even worse in Vietnam, because then it was Vietnamese, Laotian, and then it all comes down to Seattle, which is a whole America's dumb. Yes.
Well,
the point of the show is America's dumb.
I mean, dumb in the asshole sense, but not dumb in the opportunistic sense.
Correct. You're right, Bean. Yes,
any time that an ethnic or racial minority can be of use, we're more than welcome, but only until that usefulness has run its course.
So Chinese can build the railroads, Mexicans can pick the crops, but they can't vote. You can build the country, just don't lead the country.
Or stay once the work is done.
Yeah. Anyway, back to Avatar.
Sorry. So those are kind of those two episodes in a nutshell. I'm still, after actually, like, I watched episodes 5 through 8. I'm like, I will give it I will watch the entire series. I'm giving it till
I'm definitely on board now, for sure.
I'm not.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
Because I'm the one who wasn't sold. I thought you'd be sold before I was.
I'm still reconciling Planet Asia, quite honestly.
Mm.
Okay, fair.
And I think
maybe I'm used to there never being a planet Latinx because it's never been done before, ever. I mean, Bean, can you think of a series that has been central?
That is Mexiland.
Yeah. And like Encanto doesn't count. I love Encanto, but it's one family. It's not a region.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Like-
and it's and it is specifically meant to be a representation concept. The story that's not the same as what Cable is saying. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
some non-Asian people got together and created a world that is basically Asian people, but
Mhm.
but not technically, because it's a different world. No, we
Which-
don't have that.
Which
But-
is weird because, like, Cable, you have a problem with that. Me personally, if someone who was Latinx in background said, like, hey, I'm creating Latino land with these characters, like, it'd be hard for me to be annoyed at. I'd be like, yes, Brown Town.
So,
But then I'd be like,
someone
But,
is doing that, and we have to figure out how to get them on the podcast.
I'm right here, actually. Season of Bruja comes out March 16th.
I was actually referring to. This is all true. And-
Also,
and-
David.
and we're-
David. Yeah.
Yes. Al Madrigal.
Who the fuck is that?
from
We've
The
talked
Daily
about
Show.
this.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not mad. Who is that?
Al Madrigal from The Daily Show. He's one of their correspondents.
Oh, yeah.
He's
We
also a
should have him on the
comedian and
show.
actor. He is writing a comic book series that is essentially Mexicans from another planet who end up coming to Earth to be superheroes.
Oh,
We-
God damn it.
Yes.
I wrote a comic where Mexicans from Earth go to other planets to be superheroes.
like Superman. But
Mhm.
from
No,
here.
literally in that Mexicans. So I have an outline. I actually have a fucking outline about Mexicans never originated from Earth. We originated from Mars.
Mm.
That is where we're from. So Mars is space Mexico, for lack of a better term. Yeah, no, I have written that, and I want to do more of that and do the Justice League of America.
hmm
But it's a Justice. It's JLM, Justice League Margs, and I want Terry Bloss to write it, to draw with me, and we write together, and we do it.
That sounds great.
Yep, there he is. Sorry. I got nothing beyond that.
I think. Yeah, I get what you're saying though. Like, and then he's gone again. Oh,
There he
there
is.
you go. I was gonna say
It was a big hit, and I didn't want to cough on screen.
Oh, okay. The issue that I have with Avatar kind of crosses over when you start talking about Raya and the Last Dragon, which is another. It's like everyone's so excited about this. It's like there's so much representation of Asia and doing this. It's like all of that's true. All of it's great. I love all of this. It's also Planet of the Asians.
Well, people forget that, like, I love Raya and the Last Dragon. I actually think it's beautiful. It's a
Mhm.
beautiful film. I love Shang-Chi. All of it is beautiful. But to do, quote, the Asian myth Disney story, I feel like, especially in the West, people forget that Asia is like 1/3 of the world,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that there are so many subcultures within that statement that it's like, yeah, you can enjoy it, but realize that, like, you're only appeasing a fraction of the people.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to let everybody in. It's like when someone says, like, oh, I'm doing the definitive, a Latinx movie. I'm like, really? Are you covering from Arizona to fucking the tip of Argentina? Are you covering the entire fucking southwestern hemisphere?
You're not a monolith.
No, we're not a
Yeah.
monolith. Beat and I have different backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
We're both Mexican American. We have very different backgrounds. Here, she and I have talked about this privately. Like, my family comes from the Yucatan, and I think being you said you were from Central Mexico City, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, we're both Mexican American. We are so fucking different. We're so different. Everything about us is different. Other than we're both from this one area of Central America that connects North America and South America. Like that's what we have in common.
Mm-hmm.
And that we both have fantastic taste in music. I don't know what that meant.
Fair enough.
No, fair enough.
I think the other thing, especially with Avatar, is Planet of the Asians becomes less offensive to me when it's made by Asians.
Right. That's your sticking point with Avatar right now, is that it's not made by the people that it's sort of representing.
Yep.
Fair.
And I heard a lot of people explain that away when they were telling me, it's like, no, you'll really like this. It's this. I'm like, I don't know about this. So again, I get that it's a kid show and it has it's trying to reach people with a different voice. And I get that when I'm watching Prodigy, where it's like, it's teaching all kinds of lessons and it's still very much Star Trek.
I'll admit that I'm enjoying Prodigy more than Avatar.
Right. Well, Prodigy is a franchise that you already appreciate.
And Denise, you're 100% correct. I am. Yeah, it's Star Trek, so I'm already lined up to love it. Yeah, you're right.
I don't feel the same way that you do, Cable, about the like who's on screen versus who's behind the camera type. Obviously it's animated, so it's not literally that, but that. But again, it's not my culture that's being potentially misrepresented here. But what I did notice that kind of bothers me is when you look at the cast, it's pretty diverse. Like there are a goodly number of Asian people in the cast, as well as people from a lot of different ethnicities and races. But when you look at the female voice actors, almost none of them are Asian. Almost all of them are Caucasian women. And that doesn't sit great with me. Like not even Katara, the female lead character, is voiced by an Asian actor. It is Mae Whitman, who I kind of like. She's in stuff that I enjoy. But that is I think that's a miss. That's a swing and a miss to me.
I think the two lead characters that are Asian or Pacific Islander are Uncle Iroh and Zuko. They're played by Mako and Dante Basco, respectively.
Yep.
So, well, I think that we can pick up more Avatar stuff when I get back from my day off next week. And when Aaron remembers that he's on mute and he can start talking to us again.
I didn't realize I hit mute. I was about to agree with you, Cable, and then I've been told by many people that Avatar Season 2, because I know we're getting kind of close to that, relatively, is where it really kind of picks up to where Cable, you might enjoy it more.
I'm not enjoying it. I'm just not as taken with it as I think other people expect me to be. But as Merrick has pointed out before, I do have a very bad habit of going, oh, everyone likes this. Fuck it, I hate it.
Yeah.
which is
That is
And I-
true.
And I will
very
give full
hip for us.
disclosure. I have watched Legend of Korra,
Mm.
Well,
and I adore it.
keep it to yourself. We're not there yet.
I adore Legend of Korra. I adore it. In so many ways, I adore that show.
Cool. Well, we'll talk about it more,
Yeah.
but not next week. The week
No.
after.
So next week, it'll be myself and Denise.
Mhm.
Cable, if you want to email us your thoughts on Student Body, I actually would really appreciate that.
I will do that.
Even if you want to record stuff, and we will upload it in the show.
Oh,
Oh,
Now that we have that technology.
Oh
I hadn't
yes.
thought about that.
Oh yes. I don't know. We're not going to do Avatar because without Cable, we can't do Avatar. So I don't know what else Bean and I are going to do next week.
Shit, there's been a shit ton of Star Trek Prodigy. There's been a shit ton of Boba Fett. I'm not going to feel bad if you talk about Boba Fett without me.
All
But
right, Bean. We're
still going
all
to talk about Boba Fett.
We're going all Wars and Trek next week. Yeah.
All of the stars.
Mm-hmm.
What if Cable and
That doesn't
Denise,
get back yet. Yes.
What if we have someone who's never been on the show before on their own as not part of something else?
Go on.
And by that, I mean, what if we ask Denise's lovely husband, Christian, to join the show as a guest host?
To talk about what exactly?
Well, he loves Star Wars. I know he's watching the Book of Boba Fett.
Hmm.
And for those who don't know, even though it will be a week late, she's so annoyed right now. Myself and Christian, and of course, Greg of Building Character, we have been proper gentlemen, and we have watched the finest of jackassery at the cinema. I'm not saying we have to talk about Jackass forever. But I feel like, Denise, you have kept your husband away from the show. And I think that time has come to an end.
Oh, do you?
I do. I feel like he and I need to talk about the ribaldly good-natured gentleman of a one Johnny Knoxville and a one Steve-O, where we can talk about our experiences in the town center of one Kalakamas, of our experiences. And then I think maybe we can talk about Star Wars. I think he enjoys the book of said Boba Fett.
And he is watching Prodigy with me also.
And he is also watching Prodigy. So I feel like for you to say no, Denise, you were denying a white man, as like all white men who have never given their chance to speak their word.
You're not even giving me a chance to say yes. You're already like, I'm already in trouble for saying no.
I'm preparing. Okay, what are your thoughts then?
Obviously,
you're in
now
your
I can't
cups.
say no. I'm not allowed to say no at this point.
Exactly.
Well, I guess that's settled.
Denise, you can say no.
You can say
I mean,
no.
he might not actually be available. So
I 100% support your agency to say no.
I don't.
how about tomorrow morning? You ask me again.
All right.
When he
You might feel differently tomorrow.
No, he
No, I
won't.
won't.
You remember how they
Cable knows.
reacted in the theater when we saw the trailer for
Oh
Jackass.
my god,
We
it
all
was
just-
so much fun.
We all just looked at each other and went, what the hell is going on with these two right now?
Denise,
What the
your
hell?
husband, within the first 12 minutes of the movie, when we saw it, grabbed my arm and went like, my wife would divorce me. I'm so glad you're here.
I mean, we're
No, I
still
can't tell
married.
you anymore.
He went to the movie.
No. It was when we were at the movie.
Okay.
Myself,
Anyway,
Christian, and Greg of Building Character. We formed a bond that night. The bond of gentlemen at the theater.
Okay.
okay. That is all I need to hear about that.
How dare all of you? How dare you? How dare you?
And on that note,
On that note, I'm Aaron Duran.
I am Pinarita.
And I'm Cable Hashitani.
And a big thanks to David Bowles and to Lee Ann Kurr for signing in on this ridiculous episode of Geek in the City Radio. We'll talk to you all next week.
Bye, nerds.